sort of button there, and that. So when it's red, and you literally just press that button there, and it will go red, and that.
Right, welcome to the full council and welcome back to all those who joined us for our earlier special meeting. As usual, item 1 is apologies. Do we have any apologies? No apologies this time. Thank you very much. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Does anybody want to declare anything? Or forever hold your peace? No? Okay, thank you. Item 3, minutes of the meeting of council held on the 20th of September 2023. We will now approve the minutes of the last meeting of that council. Will somebody move these, please? Thank you, Councillor Shanker. Seconded by Councillor Pearce. No discussion on that. Right, item 4. This is the bit I enjoy. I have several announcements to make this evening. Before I do, I'd like to deal with some housekeeping matters. Once again, we have a large number of public questions submitted for this evening. In the interest of ensuring everyone can have their question heard, we will move directly to supplementary questions. Written responses have been provided in the booklet, circulated in advance of the meeting, and available to view on the Democracy portal. Please remember to turn on your microphones when addressing the meeting this evening and face the front of the room. Otherwise, you may not be heard properly. I have been particularly busy since the last meeting of the council, attending events and meetings with residents in Derby. It was an honour to lead the city's remembrance commemorations earlier in November. Thank you to the hundreds of members of the public who joined us in the marketplace on both Armistice Day and Remembrance Sunday, as well as the members of the Armed Forces community, past and present, who participated in the parade. I'd also like to thank the many officers and partners involved in ensuring the events were organised safely and respectfully. But in particular, I'd like to pay tribute to our Council and Civic Support Manager, Jodie Shelton, who worked tirelessly with colleagues and partners for many weeks to ensure this success. I believe the changes made this year were exceptional, and the feedback I've received from the public and those directly involved on the day were extremely positive. Finally, it was great to see many friendly faces at my charity quiz earlier this month. This year, I am raising money for 2 charities that are close to my heart: the Jericho Society, who operate a residential addiction recovery service at Jericho House in Alveston, and Parental Alienation UK Awareness, who raise awareness about the harm to children caused by alienation from a parent or other family member. It is in this context that I'd like to share a short video with you. Just bear with us with the technical issues. Well, thank you very much for watching that, and I hope that you'll consider attending one of the many charity events that are planned for the remainder of the year and donating to the charity fund. Next, I would like to take this opportunity to recognise two local organisations that have been recognised by the King's Award for Voluntary Service. The awards are presented annually to some of the UK's most inspiring volunteer-led groups for their charitable endeavours and are equivalent to an MBE. Recognised this year in Derby were Our Michelova, a community interest company who organise and arrange community events and projects in Michelova, working with and alongside other local groups and stakeholders, and Friends of Derby Arboretum, a group of volunteers invested in the history, upkeep and future of Britain's first public park. I'd like to congratulate to all those involved. It's fantastic to see your hard work, dedication and public spirited rewarded in this way. The 25th of November is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls. It marks the start of 16 days of activism that seeks to end gender-based violence in all its forms. Many of us have chosen to wear a white ribbon in recognition of the threat posed to millions of women and girls across the world today by physical, sexual and psychological violence, as well as economic abuse and exploitation. I'm proud to report that our very own youth mayor, Mohammed Muntazar, has been leading a campaign with the Derby Youth Alliance and other local partners to raise awareness about the impact of misogyny in our schools and colleges. I'd like to share with you a short video that has been produced, which has been circulated to every secondary school in the city. I know Mohammed was about somewhere, but he doesn't seem to be in this meeting now. But I'd like to thank him for his efforts to tackle this incredibly important matter. I'm sure I can speak for all the councillors in saying that Derby stands opposed to violence against women and girls, and we offer you our absolute support. Okay, finally, I'd like for us to reflect on the victims of war and unrest in the Middle East, Ukraine, and elsewhere in the world. We should pause to remember all the victims. Derby is a city only strengthened by its rich diversity. We are a community made up of people with different backgrounds, faiths, and life experiences. Whatever our background, I'm sure we can all agree that recent events have been deeply upsetting. I echo the comments of faith leaders in our city and express sadness and regret at witnessing human suffering on such an incomprehensible scale. We must also pause to recognise the hurt felt by members of our own community, many of whom have connections to loved ones in these regions. As community leaders, we must work together to ensure perspectives are shared and that the pain of members of our community feel does not give rise to racial or religious persecution or intimidation. I would therefore propose that we pause for a minute's silence and reflection before proceeding with the rest of our meeting. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item is item 5, statements by members of the council. I understand that no statements have been received. Item 6 is the questions from the members of the public. We will now hear questions from members of the public to cabinet members. We've received 16 in total. As I explained earlier, we will move directly to supplementary questions unless a response has not already been provided in the booklet. The public questions are limited to 30 minutes in duration. Please be prompt when asking your supplementary questions. So the first number A, here is Kelechi Chioba to Councillor Martin. Are you here? Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much. My question is, the charges are unaffordable given disability expenses, the cost of living, and the low amount of income which people are allowed to keep under the minimum income guarantee in the assessment of charges. What is the council doing to stop people in need of home care support from dropping out due to charges and to address care charges debt, which is causing stress and affecting people's health?
Thank you very much for raising this incredibly important issue. As it says in the answer, the charges that the council puts to people are levied according to national guidelines. We do understand that there are really quite serious issues facing people right across the city at the moment, including the council's own budget problems. So if we weren't so cash-strapped, we might do even more for people. We've got a whole series of measures that we are doing with warm hubs, with special grants, etc., etc. But what I would suggest, if you know we're doing what we can, it would be nice to do more. If you know somebody in particular hardship, please get in touch with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Just as a reminder to cabinet members, if you just face this way, because the microphones might not pick you up if you're facing, trying to, I know it's tempting to talk to them directly, but if you speak to the microphone, then everybody can hear. Thank you. Next one is Derek Gold. I understand he's not here. So the next one is Simon Bacon. Do you have a supplementary, Simon?
I do, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Other than badly, how does the weed control strategy handle wards of the city like Normanton Ward, of which you were a councillor until recently, where parking on and off pavements, along with bins on streets, means there's no chance of using motorised equipment? Surely this is a known issue dating back years, which has not been an issue in the past. So what's changed? Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, for your supplementary. Nothing's changed. I mean, I think what the original response to your question was, we are trying to work towards getting weeds removed. There are methods of doing that. And one thing we are be doing is actually promoting and the scheduling of weed control and finding ways to move those vehicles so that the motorised vehicles can do that. So we'll continue to do that. And I understand the problems in Normanton, which have not just started now, they've been there for a number of years.
Thank you. The next question is Ruth Jackson. Is she here? No. Thank you. Next question is Eve Sacker. Is she here? Did you have a supplementary?
I do, yes. I am a representative of the Jewish community on all of the bodies mentioned in the answer, so the Multi-Faith Centre, the Faith Alliance. And so I'm well aware of the steps that have been outlined in your answer to me. I'm also painfully aware of how long it's taken council leaders to sign the statement of peace that has been published today. This is a very neutral statement which has no condemnation of terrorism or a call for the release of hostages, and yet it was only finalised this morning. If community relations are as important as the council is saying, why has it taken so long for leaders to sign it? Thank you.
Councillor Hazelgrave.
So, thank you for your question. It was nice to meet you, Eve, just before the meeting. I think a lot of the things that the council does takes a lot longer than we would all like to happen. But it's because they have to go through a process. And it's a question of contacting leaders and getting them to sign up. And it has taken maybe longer than we would have liked. But it has been signed, and it is a positive move. I also think that all councillors, in their role as representatives of their community, need to foster mutual understanding and respect.
Thank you. Vanessa Boone, do you have a supplementary question on funeral poverty?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your answer and recognising the work of Derby Poverty Truth Commissioners in raising the concern about the return of the pauper's funeral due to the cost of living crisis and people struggling to bury their loved ones. The question is, with that commission actually now, the Poverty Truth Commission is winding down due to funding coming to an end, there'll be a gap in the mechanism for voices of lived or living experience of poverty to inform policy making. To fill this gap, will this council meet with people who've been involved in the Derby versus Poverty initiative that's supported by the charity, the Equality Trust, to fill that gap?
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Vanessa. I'm not sure that is quite a follow-on from funerals, and I think that question is one more for my colleague, Councillor Hazelgrave, if I've understood your question. But I think the answer would be yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Marios Dukas? Not here. Emma Jones? Not here. Vanessa Boone, supplementary question on ethical debt policy?
Thank you. It's a follow-up from the commitment that the Leader of the Council made last time to consider this, but with the answer, it's still not clear what the use of bailiffs looks like in the new policy. And under the previous administration, the council did send bailiffs to homes where domestic abuse and financial control actually exacerbated risk in that home. And the person who paid the price of that decision of a bailiff coming round to that home, of course, was the woman. Whilst it's great to see white ribbons in symbolic support, will this council move beyond symbolic support to actual support and stop the use of bailiffs in homes where domestic abuse is a risk factor? Thank you.
Councillor Shanker.
Thank you, Vanessa, for your original question and your supplementary question. As stated, the new debt management policy will come to Cabinet in January. We minimise the use of bailiffs now. They are used as a last resort, but make sure they continue to be used as a last resort. And if there's additional help we can provide, people who are suffering domestic abuse, we'll make sure that's considered also.
I don't think the ribbons will be of great comfort.
The next question was withdrawn. I understand Pitney is not here. The next question is from Kaleshi Chioba to Councillor Hazelgrave regarding race and disability discrimination. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. My question goes, what is the council doing to ensure that disabled asylum seekers are accessing a bus pass and other resources to be able to live and participate in the community?
Councillor Hazelgrave.
My understanding is that a lot has been done to help new arrivals to integrate into our city and take full part in the community that they live in. And obviously the first steps are to make sure they're provided with accommodation, that children are provided with school places, and it goes from there. There are quite a few organisations which are involved with that, and Upbeat Communities has recently formed an alliance with other interested parties to work in a more coordinated way to ensure that our new arrivals are supported and welcomed to our city.
Thank you very much. The next question is Derek Gold. He's not here. So the next question is Simon Bacon regarding contamination from bins on streets. Do you have a supplementary, Simon?
I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thank you for your reply, Councillor Dinser. You claim that where bins are persistently left out on streets, the council has taken action to address this as part of a wider community clean-up campaign. Can you please send me a list of streets in Normanton Ward where such work has taken place in the last 12 months, so I can judge if your work has been successful? Thank you.
Councillor Dinser.
Thank you, Simon. I shall see whether the officers can provide that information.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next question is Emma Jones. She's not here, and Mayor Bain has been withdrawn. So that takes us on to item 7, which is questions relating to the Derbyshire Fire Authority and Derby Homes. We have none. Now we have item 8. I don't know if the public questioners want to move upstairs or leave. You're quite welcome to. Okay, the next item is item 8, questions from non-council cabinet members. We now move to questions from non-council cabinet members. 20 have been received. Again, I will not be asking an officer to read out a summary of the question, with the exception of those where no response has been provided by the booklet. So the first question is from Councillor Jay Wright to Councillor Shankar on ethical leadership. Do you have a supplementary?
I do, Mr. Mayor. I was extremely disappointed by the response. I would have hoped on reflection that you would have done the right thing and made an apology. So much for respect for fellow councillors and the office of mayor and the diverse council's declaration. Are you prepared now or ever to make a public apology to the mayor and Councillor Pandy for your failure to challenge disrespectful behaviour and language by your group in this chamber?
Maybe I should have declared an interest. I didn't realise the question was coming along. Councillor Shankar.
Do you want to do that now, Mr. Mayor? I think my initial answer to Councillor Wright explains my position quite clearly. And the councillor that Councillor Wright seems to be trying to continue to harass and single out has apologised both personally and publicly for his comments made during the September meeting. And I understand those comments and that apology has duly been accepted by Councillor Pandey. So if Councillor Pandey has accepted that apology, why can't Councillor Wright accept it?
Councillor Onwahu, I know that you're new to this. Just say that you want to make a point of personal explanation, please.
Thank you very much. I want to make a point of personal explanation. It's been quite a while, and I'm sure a few people on that side will probably be waiting to hear what I say next, but it shouldn't be as controversial. I reached out to Councillor Pandey after the the unfortunate remarks made in the heat of the moment, and I explained to him that as a fellow person of color, you know, we understand just how sometimes, you know, it can be frustrating to get your point across, and you just, even though you think you want to say something on behalf of everyone, sometimes it might not be taken in that the way you want to put it across. And of course, Councillor Pandey accepted my my explanation and my apology, and we've since been out in the ward together, representing our people. Now, if the councillor in question has accepted this, I just wonder what it is you want. What more you want, Councillor Wright?
Councillor Onwahu, personal explanation is fine, but we're not allowed to question. Okay.
Oh, no, I'm not questioning him. I'm just wondering what else he wants.
But,
Perhaps you
that's a
can
question.
meet me sometime and then we can talk about it. Thank you.
We've heard your personal explanation. Thank you very much. Okay. Next question is Councillor Hassel to a sister-city relationship. Would you like? Have you got a supplementary? No, thank you. Councillor Pandey, free bulky waste collection. Do you have a supplementary?
Mr. Mayor, yes, I do. I can't see any clear answer being given. And what I want to say is that they knew clearly the money wasn't there, because Baggy keeps saying, you know, the money isn't there, and we have had talks about it. What I want to say is, why did you promise it in the first place if you knew money wasn't going to be there? Is this going to be like, you know, are we going back to Bunwade days, and is Baggy going to be synonymous with Bunwade?
Councillor Pandey, can you address Councillor Shankar as Councillor Shankar, please? You've asked your question, have you?
Yeah, I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Dinser, have you got a response, please?
I think the question is asked, and the agenda for December will have a paper on free bulky waste collection. So I can't be clearer than that. So I'm not sure what the supplementary was, or if it was a supplementary.
Thank you. Councillor Eyre, you've got a question on neighbourhood board funding. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Dinser, for your answer. A key element of the transition to the localities model, in line with the change to all-out election cycles, was to allow the full amount of neighbourhood board funding, either 60 or 40,000 dependent on the ward, to be allocated and or spent at any stage of the 4-year term. However, my conversations with officers suggest there's still no guarantee that neighbourhood board funding can be carried over from year 1 to year 2 and so on, and it may not be able to be pooled over a number of years to fund large-scale projects like a major play park upgrade that we want to do in Oakwood Ward. So can the Cabinet member provide a guarantee to all members of this council, and especially to all neighbourhood board chairs, that by the time the financial year ends in March 2024, any unallocated neighbourhood board funding from year 1 will be able to be rolled over into year 2 and so on, especially where planning for large projects is concerned?
Councillor Dinser.
Councillor Eyre, I mean, what information you've been given is not the information I've been given. It's been confirmed that the funding can be rolled over, and that's what the discussion we're having in our locality area. So if that's the information you've had, I'm happy to talk to the outside to say that is not the case, and I'd be happy to see who communicate that to you. That is not true. The funding has not changed. The additional bit is about being able to roll over the funding from one year to the next, as opposed to having to spend it within the year. That is a position, as far as I understand, of the council, and if you have different information, I'd like to get some detail on that.
Thank you. Next question is Councillor Mulhall about Blue Badge backlog to Councillor Hazelgrave. Do you have a supplementary?
I do indeed, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. I'll go easy on you, Councillor Hazelgrave, don't worry. Mine is specifically around grace period. So as far as I'm aware, the grace period only relates to Derby City Council, which is all very well and good, and I'm very supportive of that. But I've got a number of residents who have to go to Nottingham for medical treatment. So if they're fined in Nottingham because their blue badge is out of date, do you expect them to fork the bill, or will the council fork the bill for that fine?
Councillor Hesselgrave.
You raise an interesting point there, Councillor, and I have some sympathy with that. This is an issue that's not just facing people who live in Derby going out of Derby, but people from Nottingham who come to Derby on the same basis. We're trying to get agreements with local councils, and I believe we've made some progress on that, that they will give a grace period similar to the one that we've given. And it's a reciprocal arrangement. Clearly, if somebody goes down to Brighton, for example, that will be an outlying occasion, and we approach Brighton Council on their behalf if they let us know, but it will be up to Brighton Council. The whole thing clearly needs some rationalisation by legislation. I do sympathise with people. We are giving a grace period to our own residents within our own city, and we're doing what we can to mitigate issues outside our city, but it's not something we can impose, it's something we get by agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Potter, do you have a question about removal of disabled parking spaces? Do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smale, you have a question about the Spondon Fly. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the answer, Councillor Swan. So, when we move forward with this, obviously we're quite passionate about this in our ward in Spondon. Would be willing to work with us and meet with us in the future, along with Trent Barton, to discuss the ongoing issue that we have with the Spondon Fly. Thank you.
Councillor Swan.
Thank you, Councillor Smell, most certainly.
Councillor Pearce, do you have a question about Cabinet Member meeting? Do you have a supplementary? Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. We need to read the question out. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Alex, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Pearce's question to Councillor Dinser is, on Wednesday the 15th of November, there was a scheduled Cabinet Member meeting to discuss the bereavement services fees and charges. Can the Cabinet Member give an explanation as to why this didn't take place, please?
Councillor Dinser.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce, for your question. The day before I came back from leave, and there was a family commitment which I could not get out of, so I could not attend the meeting. So it was rearranged, and I think tomorrow is the date for the next meeting.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Pearce?
I don't, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for that explanation. Thank you.
Councillor Lonsdale, you have a question about community cohesion. Do you have a supplementary?
I do, Mr. Mayor. We've talked about the statement for peace in the public questions. Is it possible for all councillors to have the ability to sign the statement for peace that has been given out by the Multi-Faith Alliance?
Councillor Hesselgrave.
I think the first process, I suppose, to start the ball rolling is that we've had agreement by all group leaders to sign up to that. So the next stage would be, of course, if you want, to open it to all councillors to do that and invite them to sign it. I don't see any harm in that. And we could look at a process to facilitate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matt Holmes, you have a question about sustainable transport and housing growth. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The residents at Mickleover's new Hackwood and Park and Grange estates were promised a bus service supported by developer Section 106 funding, secured in this specific case by Derby City Council officers during the planning process. And since then, Mickleover ward councillors have regularly liaised with council officers on this. Whilst progress has been slow, we've been passing on positive updates to residents. However, we now understand that it's highly unlikely that a bus service will be delivered and joins a growing list of developer-funded mitigations that the council is either stalling on, refusing or failing to bring forward. So my question is, you've said that you believe we're in a climate crisis and you are committed to actions to address this, such as support of active travel and public transport. With 3,500 approximately new dwellings in the Mickleover area, a majority now built, the increase in traffic on our local roads has been enormous. Can you therefore confirm to residents at Hackwood Park and Grange that Derby City Council will draw down the large amount of developer funding available to support the delivery of a bus service they were promised? Thank you.
Councillor Swan.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. I'm more than happy to have a discussion outside this meeting with myself, you and Nigel O'Brien to discuss this in further detail.
Councillor Kay, question about footpaths in car parks. Do you have a supplementary?
I do, Mr Mayor. The question particularly asked about what the council's policy is on keeping these safe and accessible. We obviously have standards for highways, about like at the levels at which we will deal with repairs and that sort of thing. Do they apply to these other paths, or do we work to different standards? Yeah, it's just that policy question that I just wanted a bit more clarity to. Thank you.
Councillor Dinser.
And I think the response did try to clarify that the paths which we are responsible within our parks, we endeavour to keep them clear and usable, particularly with the weather, with leaves and things. Where we're not responsible for those, then that is a different matter, and whoever's responsible will have to take care of those. So we will try to endeavour to keep them as well as possible, and they're scheduled to do that. So that's what we continue to do.
Councillor Eyre, you had a question on city centre pigeons. Would you have a supplementary?
I do not, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. That might be a first. Councillor Mulhall, you have a question on city centre antisocial behaviour. Do you have a supplementary?
I do indeed. Mr Mayor, thank you very much. I'd like to thank Councillor Dinser for his response. Thank you very much. My supplementary is focused around public space protection orders. Have you considered implementing a public space protection order? I'm aware, and I'm sure you are as well, that they can be implemented for a period of 3 years and also extended for 3 more years after that as well. And I think it would send a clear message that certain behaviours in the city centre will not be tolerated, and it would reassure the public that you are taking action.
Councillor Dinser.
Yeah, I mean, public place protection orders have been in place before, and they need reviewing every so often. The need for them has not diminished, has not changed, and since I've taken over responsibility with the new administration for community safety, I've looked to see what has already been done, what hasn't been done, and as my initial response says, I have convened a city centre summit of all our partners, all organisations working in the city, to see how we can tackle antisocial behaviour and provide better community safety for everybody. So I will continue to do that, and I will certainly look at public place protection orders to see whether they are up to date and in place. If not, we will work together to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smail, Spondon Woodside Development, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. It's just if Councillor Shiraz Khan could release that letter to the 3 ward councillors as soon as possible, that would be most greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor Khan?
Yes.
Councillor Lonsdale, do you have a supplementary to your food waste question?
I do, thank you. As we know, we shouldn't be sending food waste off to landfill. So to stop excess food waste going to landfill, will the council consider separating food waste and having a separate food waste collection over this period and beyond even?
Councillor Dinser again.
I do believe that's something being looked at around that, so I'll keep you posted in terms of what is going on. But I think there is a new requirement that we look at how we provide separate food collection for disposal, and I shall get whatever information we have at the moment made available to you. Also.
Thank you. Next question is Councillor Kerr. Highways hazard reporting. Do you have a supplementary?
I'm hopeful, Mr Mayor, that we will get Darcy working better. How soon do we expect changes to happen to deal with this particular issue?
Well, Councillor Kerr, it strikes a chord with me because I remember, and this was before Darcy, I came to I left Kingsway supermarket, the Sainsbury's, and encountered at the crossroads with you, Toxteth New Road and Manor Road and Kingsway, that the lights had gone down, which was actually potentially very hazardous. And I decided to turn left rather than go straight on when I could filter into that lane. I understand and I appreciate the fact that you're reporting things. When I eventually got through to someone, and I can't remember who I got through to, they told me that, thank you for calling, but this has already been reported and officers are onto it, and there's a team that works 24 hours to look at lights, or is available 24 hours on call. Darcy is kind of a learning system as well, and the people who organise it, I can improve it by what it finds are things where it can actually have a better response, or there's another way that it can feed things through on particular issues. So I can't say when that will be resolved. AI is new to us, and you know, we rely on people who know a hell of a lot better than me about the system to inform you about that. But I'll ask that you're informed when that process has been improved. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Eyre, you've got a supplementary on brown bin collections?
I'll turn my first into a second, Mr Mayor. No supplementary.
Councillor Smale, do you have a supplementary to Children's Services focused visits?
I do. Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Just first of all, thanks for the detailed response in the question, Councillor Whitby. I think it's just more of a, can we share the same thanks to our officers in Children's Services for the great work that's been going on, and we would extend the working relationship moving forward in Children's Services, because I think this is a very encouraging Ofsted inspection from the focus visit. I believe that there is a letter that's obviously embargoed for the time being, but I've been told that I will be shared that in the near coming future. But just to express my thanks to everyone in Children's Services for their continued hard work. Thank you.
I'm not sure that was a question.
I want to respond anyway, Mr Mayor. Thank you, genuinely. Yeah, the response from Ofsted was extremely positive. I suppose the service is already outstanding, so you know, there's only so far you can go. You either maintain the service or get worse. But from the information we heard on the day, it's clearly been maintained. They were very positive. The letter is going to come out on the 29th, and obviously we'll share a copy. So thank you. And yeah, the staff are clearly working extremely hard, and that was all reflected in the report. Thank you.
Councillor Lonsdale, do you have a supplementary for the support of asylum seekers?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Smale, do you have a supplementary for vacancy control?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. It's just, obviously, I know the first part of the question was answered, but could I have total vacant post numbers? I'm sure Service Director will be able to provide that to me. Thank you.
Councillor Shanker. Is it Shanker?
You answered it. Thank you, Councillor Smale, for recognising your question was fundamentally flawed initially. There is no recruitment freeze that you're claiming, but if you want general figures about the number of vacancies in the council, I'm sure that information can be obtained and shared to make you better informed.
Right, that ends the councillor questions. Thank you very much for all that. We now move on to item 9. We will now consider a minute extract from the Children, Young People and Skills Scrutiny Review Board. The Local Government Act 2000 requires the council to appoint one or more parent governors and faith representatives to the Overview and Scrutiny Board responsible for scrutinising education matters. The minute proposes the appointment of a new Church of England representative to the board and requires the council's approval. Councillor Lonsdale, as the Chair of Children, Young People and Skills Scrutiny Review, will you move the minute, please?
Yes.
I think you move the minute as printed. Thank you very much.
Move the minute as printed.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you very much. All those in favour, please show. Do we have anybody against? Thank you, that's carried. Right, we now move on to the motions, items 10 and 11. We will now consider 2 notices of motion. The first one is respect for public service workers, moved by Councillor Bolton and seconded by Councillor Ashby. Councillor Bolton, would you like to open this?
Thank you. It's a real shame that there has to be a motion like this here at full council. And there's nothing political we are here to be decent citizens, in my view, and to care about everyone who delivers frontline services, whether that be here in the council or in the NHS. They are people who have worked for this city and country, obviously, during the pandemic. They kept shops going, they kept hospitals going, and it's unfortunate that the middle paragraph of the motion gives some unpleasant statistics, in that whilst they're carrying out their duties, they have to be, unfortunately, harassed, attacked, and verbally abused in some cases. If I can give my first example, here in the council, one of our Street Pride operatives a few weeks ago got attacked in the city centre. He was carrying out his duties early in the morning, picking up litter, and he got attacked by two males. He got kicked in the head. He's still in hospital. And I'm sure all of us here this evening will want to send our best wishes to that member of staff. He unfortunately has a brain injury because of that attack. The police, thankfully, have got this on CCTV and are pursuing it, so I won't say anything more on this issue, but it brings to light what is happening, not only in Derby, but throughout the country. The middle paragraph of my motion is regarding the incidents at the Central England Co-op, of which I'm a Labour and Cooperative councillor, as are many of my colleagues in the chamber this evening. So I felt it prudent that I get some examples and some statistics to back up the motion. Now, the statistics I've got finish in October, which was obviously last month, so they're the most up-to-date figures that I could get. The total reported crimes across the Central England Co-op stores in Derby, of which there are 37. The incidence of reported crime has increased by 812 when compared to last year, so that's a 70% increase, mainly driven by threats, intimidation, and verbal abuse towards the frontline shop workers. The assaults on shop workers also has gone up, increased by 25% compared to the same period last year. And to support colleagues in most co-op shops, they've now been given their personal headphones so that they can communicate constantly with their fellow colleagues in the stores so that they can safely tackle the increase in shop assaults and indeed, in some cases, security guards that have been put outside some of the co-op stores. Threats and intimidation and verbal abuse. Total incidents of these issues have gone up by 40% when compared to last year. Incidents seem to be high at the Osmaston Road Co-op store. There were 2 incidents there recently, and also the Shelton Lock Co-op. The incidents at both those stores were reported to the police, but unfortunately, the police didn't attend, they didn't respond, and they didn't go to the store, unfortunately. So that person who got harassed and attacked did not have the police present. But I hope, in the meantime, the police have managed to get the CCTV images and are making their own inquiries. So they're just incidents locally that I've got following my investigations. And I think it's a pretty stark reaction in community that the total number of reported crimes this year so far is 23,283. I don't think I need to say very much more, Mr. Mayor. Assaults have gone up, antisocial behaviour, verbal abuse, and threats and intimidation. People who go to work, whether to deliver a service for this council, for the NHS, frontline, as I said in my opening remarks, they shouldn't have to be putting up with this. You shouldn't be frightened to go to work. They're going to give a service to all of our constituents along with ourselves. You shouldn't feel intimidated and frightened when you're going about your daily work. And I go to the Littleover Co-op in Littleover Village, and I've seen it myself, and the staff there are frightened to carry out their work. But I know the Central England Co-op, as I said, they've made some adaptations and made things slightly easier for them, but obviously it's unpredictable. You never know from one day to the next. But if I could just add regarding the incident that happened with our Street Pride operative, because of that incident that took place, we've now changed our lone working policy so that that worker or any future worker, they shouldn't be working by themselves early in the morning or late at night. They now are working in pairs, and I think that's a very sensible way of working in the future to protect the people who look after our city. They're doing their job, and I think giving that example really hits home, you know, what is happening in today's society and the effects that that has on, obviously, our worker and the knock-on effects it will have on his life. It's a very humane story, and it's very upsetting to think that all that gentleman was doing was picking up litter for people who drop it in our city. I think the rest of the motion speaks for itself, Mr. Mayor. I know it's going to be seconded, and the action that obviously it says in my final paragraph is that we report these incidents to our Derby Police and Crime Commissioner for her to action and become aware of what's happening. And we're asking for the police to just support the victims of such crime. I hope it is a unanimous decision of the Council this evening that we move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Right, Councillor Ashby, you have a right to speak. Would you like to speak?
Yes, please. I would like to speak now. Thank you. Mr. Mayor and fellow council members, I'm seconding the motion because I believe everybody should be able to go to work without fear of what the day will hold. Though I do acknowledge that there are some occupations in which make it impossible. But this is not what most frontline workers sign up for, whether they're part of our Street Pride team, whether they're shop assistants, whether they're GP receptionists, whatever the role. Nobody signs up to be abused and intimidated. Having been in the very fortunate position of having worked for almost 48 years in a job I enjoyed, and where I was able to look forward to going to work each day, that might sound odd, but I did, I would wish that for everybody. I was, however, assaulted on one occasion by a patient many years ago, and I can still remember how it made me feel. So I can fully understand how terrifying and how vulnerable it makes the victim of any such abuse feel. I was in the fortunate position at the time of knowing it was unlikely to be repeated. But having worked for 30-odd years in general practice, I know that the front line, the receptionists, over the years, the amount of abuse that they received increased radically. When I was first working in general practice, it wasn't really an issue for those in frontline in general practice. And nobody, as I say, signed up for that. So I can't imagine, well, I can try to imagine, and we can all try to imagine what it must feel like for people who are going to work on a daily basis in jobs where there is an increasing incidence of abuse of frontline workers through, verbal intimidation, through verbal abuse, and for some, even physical attack. Most of us, if not all of us here, use frontline services of one sort or another, whether it's going to the GP, whether it's going shopping, so we can imagine how vulnerable we would feel if we're in a situation, and it may have happened to many of us here, where you're present when the receptionist at the GP surgery or somebody in a shop assistant is being abused. You don't know what to do. I've been present when it's been happened in general practice, and other patients around don't know what to do. They freeze. They themselves become frightened. And when we're present ourselves, you don't know, should you intervene? Should you try to stand up for the person who's being abused? Will you then draw the wrath of the assailant on yourself? It's a very difficult situation to be in. And especially if there are vulnerable people around who are ill or elderly or frail, or, you know, if there's young children present. This isn't a party political issue at all. This is about human decency and everybody behaving in a courteous and mannerly fashion. It's about doing to others and treating others as we would like to be treated. It's about restoring standards and making Derby a place where all of us can find it a pleasant place to live and work in, and where visitors to our city can feel welcome and also find it a pleasant place to be. Therefore, I support this motion to request our Police and Crime Commissioner to support our frontline workers of every role and every job, and also to request the police to be proactive in investigating these crimes. And I would ask you all, regardless of political affiliation, to consider doing the same, because we're all human beings and we want everybody in our city to be treated well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. I've not had any indication of any other speakers. So, Councillor Bolton, would you like to sum up? Excuse me, sorry. Did you want to speak?
Yes,
Wright?
yes,
Sorry,
Mr.
sorry, I
Mayor.
didn't see you indicate. Sorry.
Yeah, Councillors Bolton and Ashby make a very compelling case for respect for public service workers and retail workers, and something that we would entirely support. And, you know, if you speak to the Street Pride worker, please pass on best wishes for a speedy recovery and an effective investigation against the perpetrators. In relation to the actions that suggested, these are a matter for the Chief Constable. The Police and Crime Commissioner has got responsibility. I'm sure Councillor Dinser will be able to reflect on in terms of setting the priorities for the force. The actual police and crime plan for Derbyshire has got strategic priorities that cover both reduction in crime and support for victims of crime. So, you know, these call for action should be directed towards the Chief Constable, which is something that we would very much support. And also, you know, not just for retail workers, but all public sector workers, that we would ask it to be broadened out. As Councillor Ashby made the real compelling point that nobody should be in fear and going to work to do their job, whether it be in the private and public sector. So apart from the issue in terms of the call for action being directed towards the Chief Constable rather than Police and Crime Commissioner, would support that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. We need to remember that these sorts of actions are by a minority, in fact a very small minority of the population, but they impact on all those who witnessed it, as Councillor Ashby mentioned. It isn't just those who that violence or abuse is being addressed towards, but it's those who witness as well that impacts on society. We saw the video early on about violence against women and the importance of standing up against that. And the example given there was standing up against it when it is your group where somebody is standing out and doing the wrong thing. And that is the first point, that it needs to be unacceptable in whatever environment that you're doing. And to make sure that if you are with a group of people who are your peers in some way, that they are not tolerating that sort of behaviour. I hope nobody in this room would be mixing with those sorts of people, but we may know people who may know people, and we need to be spreading that word, that it is unacceptable. And if you're in a position to say, oh, cool it, mates, just be quiet, it's not your role to do that, you need to be able to do that, because that's the way to lower that understanding in society. And I actually think it would be better to have some more training, probably for ourselves and with what more widely available, so that people know how to take that anger out of a situation without putting themselves at risk, because that is something that we don't want to do. We don't want to put anybody else at risk. The police have wonderful ways of doing it, and you know, some of the smaller PCs have a way of deflating a situation which is really powerful. I haven't got those skills as far as I know, but it's something that we maybe all need to be a little bit more aware of. I don't know if we can put that, the recommendation suggests that the Police and Crime Commissioner should come back with some method of some suggestion about how she would address this. I don't know whether it needs to be that or it's the Chief Constable, but it would be good if there was something that we could somehow apply back into the city, which will make a difference and not leave it actually all up to the police who already have a great deal to do.
With Call It Mate, I thought you were going to get into a rendition of Baggy Trousers there. Councillor Lonsdale.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I also want to support this motion. I think it's a very good motion and much needed. No one, as you guys said, should go to work and be scared. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but not that long ago, Sainsbury's workers even have started wearing body cams. You shouldn't go into a shop and be a shop worker and feel that you need to record the people who are coming because there's this abuse. But I'd also like to challenge myself and my colleagues here that we have a duty to stand up against harmful behaviours and harmful languages in our work to our communities. We are community leaders and we have a voice which is loud and we should be heard. So I fully support this motion. Thank you for bringing it.
Thank you, Councillor Lonsdale. Councillor Dinser.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I mean, we're all in agreement, and I think it's wrong for anybody who's in public front-facing work to be threatened in any way, shape or form. So I think that's said. I do understand Councillor Wright's point about the distinction between the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Chief Constable. I think the motion tries to unpick that in terms of saying, encouraging the police and crime to explore what can be done to implement. A lot of the implementation will be by the Chief Constable and the police officers. The second part is about the police being more proactive. So I think it's that spirit that you've actually highlighted is there, but I think that may be sort of unpicked a bit more. But the motion does stand and sort of does give that some sort of clarity on that. So I think without further ado, I think we would support this. Please, everybody, if we do it unanimously, we give the right message, not only for our own staff, but for all public service workers on the front line. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Poulter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I be clear at the beginning of my contribution that I don't seek to diminish the significance of what the motion covers. It's just seeking a little bit of perspective and clarification in relation to some of it, in that the numbers of public servants who are assaulted or intimidated or in fact even theft should, in an ideal world, would be zero. Unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world. And Councillor Bolton quite rightly sought to evidence to an extent the problem of it that we're experiencing. But there was just a worry for me, a slight fear that we might be putting Derby on a pedestal as an area that's specifically out to kilter with this, either worse than or better than a national picture. My understanding, Sarah, was that the figures you were quoting were for the Central Midlands Co-op. I have to say other grocery stores are available. But I say that because they too will be suffering exactly the same problem. And having said that, just to spread it, I don't perceive, and I've not seen any evidence that Derby is an outlier in this, that we're any worse or any better than the national picture. And an example of that is you quoted a figure, I think 30-odd thousand total things. And I understand that's probably over the Central Midlands Co-op area, 400-odd stores over England rather than Derby itself. We hopefully haven't got 32 incidents of this type of thing in Derby. So just to put that perspective on it, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hassel.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Our group fully support this motion, and I thank Councillor Bolton and Ashby for bringing it forward. I just wanted to make a little contribution in that all of us in this chamber are public servants, and, rightly put ourselves in front of the public and do from time to time get abused for that, rightly or wrongly. However, what I would like to mention is that me personally, I used to work in prison, and I'll just reiterate that work in prison, I wasn't in prison, and in education, and having left that employment, I personally was subject to sort of threats, messages, and the idea that people were waiting for me with knives and were going to kill me and all the rest of it. And that was purely because my name and address was quite easily to be found on the internet. So all I would say is, and not to add to the motion, but just a friendly word to everyone in this room, is that do not sell yourself short. You know, we should not take abuse in any kind of form that it comes. Yes, we'll have some verbal tennis between ourselves in this chamber, and I think that's accepted. But outside of that, there's certain standards that we should expect, and don't take it in any form that it comes. So all I would say is, yes, this motion is absolutely right in protecting our public servants, but don't sell yourself short. We need to protect ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walton, would you like to sum up?
Thank you very much, and thanks everyone for your comments. It's really gratifying to think that we can agree that the motion is the right one at this time, and it's unfortunate, as I said in my opening remarks, that we've had to bring it at all. The only reflecting on the comments that have been made, I suffered abuse when I was a magistrate, and I sat on the Derbyshire bench for 10 years, walking through the city after I dealt with an issue in court. And like Councillor Ashby, when she seconded the motion, I think we can all bring in our own experiences in life, and as Steve's just said, in our own council activities. It's the nature of the business. You're not going to please everybody all the time. But nevertheless, what's on my mind is our street pride worker who's actually in hospital because of an action and an attack that he suffered in the city. And I think that's something that we've all got to, unfortunately, think about. But I'm grateful for all the comments this evening, and I'm just very, very pleased that everybody will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, all those in favour, please show. Is anybody against? Please show. Thank you, that's carried. Okay, we then move on to item 11, which is improving safety and cutting carbon on our roads, moved by Councillor Lonsdale and seconded by Councillor Kerr. Councillor Lonsdale, would you like to open the debate?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I moved to Derby, I've lived all over England and actually quite a few places around the world. Derby is the first place I have ever lived in where we have been warned to not take children outside because of poor air quality. Smog was the word used on the radio at the time when I used it. So the first time I've ever experienced a place where there's smog. Now, this is a few years ago, as you know, when I first moved here. As I am now working with children and had to take them from place to place. So that was a concern. And this motion is here to try and make sure that does not happen in our city. Our precious city with our precious people in it should not be breathing poor quality air. And one of the main contributing factors to poor quality air is the car. Now, this is not a perfect motion. There is no such thing as a perfect motion, but it makes the start in moving towards having that better quality of air in our life, in our city. Reducing the speed limits across the city will have numerous positive effects as well, not just making our air cleaner, but it will reduce the amount of accidents because cars are going slower, so they will have more reaction time. And it will also increase the number of people using active travel because, let's face it, cycling on the roads, if you are not a very confident cyclist, is quite frightening. I cycle with my children to school regularly. We don't tend to cycle on the road. We tend to cycle on the pavement where, because my children are small.
But even then, it's quite frightening. I have to often encourage my children to do that because they are scared because of the loud, speeding traffic by them. And if the cars are slowed down, then those fears will be alleviated and more people will probably choose to cycle because it will be less scary. In fact, that has been borne out in every place that has put these sort of actions in place, reducing their speed limits. Edinburgh, London, they have seen a huge increase in active travel users. They've also seen an increase in people using public transport. But it's not all against motorists. People say when they hear about these motions to reduce speed limits, it's about, oh no, we're anti-motorists. We don't want to be anti-motorists. It reduces congestion. It reduces the amount of fuel you use. It means that your cars won't have to go over potholes so much because the roads will not have as much wear and tear on them. It will also help us reduce the tax burden on our people around us. So I believe that this is a good motion and it will help our city become a greener, happier place to live, where there are less people going to hospital because of car accidents, where people are being more active and living a healthier lifestyle. So I commend this motion to you. Please vote for it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kerr, you have a right to speak at this moment. Do you want to speak?
May I reserve my right to speak?
You can indeed. We have a speaker, Councillor Matt Holmes. Would you like to?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What goes around comes around, and I think this is a case of full council deja vu. Back in 2010-11, it was either a motion or a cabinet question. I can't quite recall, and the recordings aren't available anymore. It was in the assembly rooms. And our stance then is the same as our stance now, which is Conservative councillors in Derby will also always consider measures to improve road and pedestrian safety, promote clean and active travel, sustainable travel. But as back then in 2010-11, we believe the mechanism already exists at a local level with councillors within the neighbourhood or locality framework that we call it now, consulting with residents, council officers to consider 20-mile-an-hour limits where they may be appropriate. For example, a school on a busy residential through road where consideration of a lower limit may be both supported and appropriate. It doesn't need, nor should it be, a top-down diktat to move effectively to oppose 20-mile-an-hour on many or all of our residential roads. And I believe ultimately this motion seeks to do exactly that. And mandates and being honest with the public are important. The Liberal Democrats have periodically placed 20-mile-an-hour limits on residential roads at the forefront of their local election manifesto. But I think this motion goes even beyond that as to what they promoted in the 2023 manifesto. Now, check, but when I went to the website to have a look, it displays a 404 page not found. So what I've read in the local election leaflets, what I can remember, they were pledging to do some of this, but nowhere near what is in this motion. So Labour say in their manifesto that introduced 20's plenty and other traffic calming measures where there is demand or need. And I think that's a halfway house, but also infers potentially a top-down approach. And I'd urge them to allow ward councillors to consider what may be best for their area in consultation with residents if pursuing 20-mile-an-hour limits and traffic calming measures. So I think this motion attempts to steamroller this issue, and I think it's actually a little bit undemocratic, especially when brought by a group with just 7% of the councillors who represent Derby. So before moving on to what the motion is calling for, I think it's important to correct one of the statements in the motion. It says Derby has set a target of achieving net zero emissions by 2035. Well, it hasn't. Derby City Council has. So for Derby to achieve that, it would mean a total devastation of our local economy, Councillor Kerr. It would send us back to the Stone Age, literally, and the last person would be asked to turn the lights off, but I suppose we'd already be sitting in the dark, shivering by candlelight at that point. So the motion resolves to establish a cross-working party group or whatever to make 20-mile-an-hour speed limits the norm. I'd say trust councillors to do that. Don't burden the council with yet another committee system style working party. ONS already exists. Let's use that process. In terms of 40 to 30, yeah, let local councillors deal with it. I've got a couple of roads. We've got a couple of roads in our ward that we want to bring down. We're not trying to impose that on others or across the city. Integrating this, thinking alongside other existing initiatives such as safe havens, etc., active travel. There's no need. Trust the councillors to assess what may be best for their area in consultation with residents. That's our job. Working with police and volunteers to explore enforcement, etc. You know, I think you're in danger really of morphing into Derby's answer to Sadiq Khan and maybe even trying to emulate Labour's government in Wales at a local level. So, you know, I'm not against appropriate speed enforcement as long as it's fair and justified. For example, you know, I signed off the A52 average speed cameras rather than go for fixed cameras. And I did that because I think it would improve, and it has improved safety, but also helps the flow of traffic in a way that probably in the future automated vehicles will do. So as to not be wholly negative, you know, Speedwatch is something that I think we all support, but it's outside of the context of this motion. And finally, asking the Leader of the Council to write to the Police and Crime Commissioner to request, etc., etc. You know, again, ward councillors should already be nominating community interest sites, and I'm sure many of us are, based on the local knowledge and need for enforcement. So, for me, I personally won't be supporting this motion, and my group, sorry, not my group, the group won't be either.
Thank you, Councillor Home. Can we calm down? Calm down.
Mr. Mayor, it's not a leadership challenge, please.
Come on, Councillor Dinser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I think all the rationale building up to the actual resolution for this motion, we all agree on. You know, improving air quality, making our roads safer, reducing speed on our roads, and all those aspects are needed to be tackled, should be tackled, and certainly our manifesto is clear about bringing in, encouraging 20 miles per hour limits where in built-up areas where there's support, local neighbourhood support, and in consultation with local councillors. And we want to do that. We will be doing that as an administration, and we'll be promoting that. This motion is asking for a working group to be set up to look at a default position. I don't think the people of Derby are looking for that. We certainly aren't looking for that in our group, in the Labour group. For that reason, we will be opposing this resolution. We can do all the things that I have here. We've got school safe havens already. We've got active transport initiatives going on already. We have got identified wherever needed and required 20 miles per hour limits, or certainly 40 miles to be considered to be reduced to 30. They're all things that we can do at the moment in line with the appropriate authorities. So, you know, I think we can achieve all this, and setting up a working group. One of the things I've been struck by since being part of the administration here is that the challenges of the funding cuts and the impact on our officers and the hard work they do when they've got less of them to do it and more still needs to be done and demanded by the public. They're working their socks off to do the best they can and work hard, and we can't praise them enough in terms of what they're doing. To add another working group to look at something that will not get support, I think cross-party support, would be waste of resources in my opinion. So I'm sorry to say we oppose the motion, but we don't oppose the initiatives which are here because they're already able to be delivered and worked on, and we certainly will be doing that as a Labour administration.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Just to comment, Councillor Lonsdale, in what you said in your comments about air quality. We're all, of course, everyone in the chamber would be very concerned that we have good air quality in the city. And it is something I'm looking at from a health perspective. It's a sort of work in progress. I mean, the latest briefing I have had from the people monitoring air quality in the council points to only one spot in the city where we don't meet the national threshold for pollution, which is a cause just to observe. I'm not saying that's a cause for complacency, because I know many people think that those thresholds are too high and that we should actually be following World Health Organization thresholds. I'm aware that the Director of Public Health has received this week another report on air quality from a health perspective, and I'm meeting with her in a couple of weeks with the people who are responsible for monitoring air quality to look at that. But I just wanted to sort of make clear to the Chamber that it's something that we're looking at as a group, but also we're not an outlier in terms of national standards for air quality. Okay,
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Swan.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Longsdale. I agree with everything that everybody else said in the chamber already. And I also think that there was a lot of detail in the motion to kind of direct us towards the reasons why we should have reduced speed on traffic and safety of our neighbourhoods. But I also believe that those mechanisms are already in place. And I think that when we're looking at those kind of significant set changes, we need to make sure that the communities that we serve are involved in that conversation. And for that reason, I won't be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mulhall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Well, Lordy, where to start with this motion? They say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Well, I've not been here for a particularly long period of time. I've only been here since May, but never in my days did I think that the Derby Liberal Democrats would want to imitate the appalling Welsh Labour Party. I mean, that is really quite something. You are literally, with this motion, putting the daft in daffodil. That is what you're doing. So let's explore why. Let's start with the wording here where it says, lower speed limits reduce noise, pollution and congestion. Well, please don't make me laugh. There are countless reports. In fact, there's a report recently from Islington Council, not exactly a bastion for fire-breathing Tories, let's be honest, whereby it showed the exact opposite, that their noise pollution increased, air pollution increased and congestion got worse due to bottlenecks on all the roads. So that doesn't really stand up to scrutiny. I mean, the next point, oh lordy, shows that 20-mile-per-hour streets are popular. Tell that to the 466,000 people which signed the petition against the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit that was brought in Wales, that the Welsh Senedd brought in. And I mean, the next bit around compliance, another recent report came out from the government showing that 87% of motorists don't even adhere to 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. So it's all very good us wanting to implement this across the city, but no one's going to follow it. They're all going to ignore it. So what's the point? Literally, the whole thing is daft from start to finish. You don't go through how you intend to enforce it. I mean, engage with the Police and Crime Commissioner. Well, that's all very well and good, but it actually doesn't do anything. And quite frankly, these ideas, this is how it starts. It starts with a blanket 20-mile-an-hour ban, and then where does it progress from there? It goes to things like 15-minute cities and ULEZ. So yes, it will probably come as no surprise to anybody that I do not support this motion, and I would ask that any other councillor with a tuppence worth full of brains to do the same.
Thank you. I've got two more speakers, and then I'm going to bring this to three more speakers. Oh, four more speakers. Then I'm going to bring it to a vote. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And how do I follow that? That's the first question I've got.
Lordy, lordy.
Okay.
Don't try. Don't try.
Now, as Derby City's representative on the police crime panel, can I just beg councillors to realise that the PCC does not get involved in operational police matters. It is the Chief Constable's responsibility. Thank you very much. Now, I want to deal with the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit proposal. We have in Derbyshire the Derbyshire Road Safety Partnership. They are an organisation not only with the police, but a plethora of professional people who deal with road safety throughout the county. And I don't see how a cross-party of councillors will actually add anything to that. Why reinvent the wheel, has already been said. So that's one issue I've got with this motion. The other issue is I held a meeting with a member of the 20 is Plenty group, and whilst I said 20 mile an hour may work in some areas, it doesn't tell you a number of things. It doesn't tell you if a driver's disqualified. It doesn't tell you if a driver's not got a licence, not got insurance, is on drugs, which is a major problem with our road users today, or having had a drink. It doesn't tell you those things. So it is only a part, a 20-mile speed restriction or a 30-mile-an-hour speed restriction is only a part of the weapons in the armoury that the police and every other agency can use. So it is not a silver bullet. A 20-mile-an-hour speed limit is not a silver bullet to resolve all the issues we have on our highways today. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Pandey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I drove to London and I ended up in Ulis and then congestion zone, and whole of London is 20 mile. Majority of London is 20 miles per hour zone, and it's impossible to drive in that zone unless you're driving on a limiter. You just can't drive at 20 miles per hour. I got fined. Yeah, and I wasn't even speeding. I got fined at 23 miles per hour. It just, yeah. Well, you don't get, if it's a county like London, given enforcement, you don't get points on a license, so which is a good thing. But it's not, this motion is not looking after motorists, and I'm sure if Derby Telegraph puts a poll in their newspaper tomorrow, you will see public's view on this particular thing. Thank you.
I think the Telegraph might be more interested in the other part of your speech. Councillor Kerr.
It's actually quite interesting that a number of the speeches against this have actually illustrated why it is so important. That last one saying how difficult it is to drive at 20 is because most of the time in a built-up area, one is driving at 30. And therefore, the normal speed for driving doesn't feel like 20, it feels like 30. And I live on one of the roads which has a 20-mile-an-hour limit, and the number of people who are definitely exceeding that speed limit is significant. We've had one road in Littleover where it was so excessive that the Community Speed Watch were even given permission to catch the people who were doing 47 along it. And they wrote, as a result of that, they wrote to a lot of people, and a lot of people were reminded that 20 should mean 20.
Excuse me, Councillor Kerr. Can we just have quiet and listen to Councillor Kerr, please?
So what we were putting forward is not saying blanket, we've got to do it. We were saying let's have a working party. And yes, a working party does take resource, but also the benefits of moving forward, as have been explained, to reduce the wear and tear on our roads, to improve the number of people who are walking and cycling, which will improve the health of our community, reducing the fear that people have of walking their kids to school because of the traffic. All these things are added benefits which will actually reduce the costs to the city. But to get there, we have to move forward, I believe, much more coherently than picking off 4 or 5 roads or doing it outside of school at a particular time of day. We need to do something that is more considered. We need to work out how to involve our communities and making use of the wisdom from people across the city and from all parties as a working party, and to do it together. You can rubbish the direction that other areas are going. You can say how many people in Wales, which is a small proportion of their total population, who object to what's going on. But you can also name cities where it is going forward. London has been mentioned. There are also little ones like Lancaster, still happening in Scotland, where little by little, people are realising that the speeds that are normal in many European countries actually could be normal here too and improve the quality of life for our city. It's clearly not going to be something that we're ready for now, but I hope we will be ready for it before too much longer, because I think it will help us achieve that target, which was when we passed the motion in 2017. Okay, it was the City Council that set a target, but it was the target for the city to get to net zero, and it was officers who came forward and Cabinet who supported the idea of 2035. It will be challenging, and we are going to have to, if we believe in doing something about climate change, if we want to pick up and to run with that, we do need to be able to take difficult decisions, including setting up a working party. That isn't a lot to ask for. If we're not ready for it, we're not ready for it, but maybe by next year we will be. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Prosser.
Thank you. So, 20 mile an hour. While the aims of this motion are commendable in many aspects, it needs to be treated carefully and with respect. While many of us would like to go walking home and squashing snails, it is not always practical to do so, and we need to be careful not to make people's lives more difficult. It's my understanding that air pollution in the form of nitrogen dioxide has already reduced by 75% in this country, and due to technological advances is still dropping. We should celebrate this, as levels are now much lower than any time in recent history. Smog is not coming back. 20 mile an hour on major routes through the city would cost businesses in the area a huge amount of money. It would make the life of carers and other transport-reliant jobs much harder. Carers already struggle, often receiving no pay for travel time taken between work. Their work alone would suffer dramatically. The cost to business of implementing such a scheme in Wales is estimated to be in excess of £4 billion. Our local businesses cannot bear this burden. Next, the cost of implementing such a scheme is currently prohibitive for the council. The cost of road marking signs and legal procedures would simply destroy the council's tight finances. And finally, such a scheme is useless without enforcement. Not only can the council not afford to implement such a scheme, but our police force, as mentioned previously this evening, is already providing a service way below the desired standard. The package as a whole, I'm afraid, is simply not viable. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lonsdale, would you like to sum up?
I think we'll move to the vote, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All those in favour of the motion, please show. Thank you. All those against, please show. Motion falls. Thank you. That concludes the business of this evening's ordinary meeting. Thank you to everyone in the council chamber and those watching online. Before I close, I'd like to remind councillors that we will be meeting again in just over 2 weeks on December the 7th to consider a report relating to the East Midlands Combined County Authority. I look forward to seeing you then.